Hi everybody, welcome back, and if you're new, welcome. My name is Gabby, and if you've never been here before, never watched any of my videos, have no idea what I do, I cover true crime cases, and all the cases that I cover are a little bit older. They're all basically 20 years or older. So if that's something that you might be interested in, maybe go down below, click the subscribe button, and also make sure to turn on the post notifications to be notified every time that I upload. So the only time that I get on Reddit is for the cases that I cover, but late last month, I decided to look up my username, which I've only done this a few times before, but I had this strange feeling that I needed to just look it up and see what was going on in my tags. It was something in my gut just telling me to go on Reddit and look up my username. When I did, I saw that someone was trying to get my attention and other creators' attention as well to cover their mother's cold case. They said in their post that they had sent me over an email, so I immediately headed over to my request email and their email was right there at the top. I read their email, replied, and started looking into their mother's case. Their mother, who struggled greatly in life and whose life was taken only a year after their daughter, who I spoke to for this video, was born into this world. Their mother did unfortunately live a very dangerous lifestyle at the time that they were murdered, but investigators do believe that there are people out there today who may know exactly what happened, even believing they may know who was responsible. I did have the pleasure of speaking with the victim's daughter, Krissi, and I want to thank her tremendously for answering all of my questions and being so kind and helping me with my research for today's video. With all of that being said, this is the case of Wilma Nissen. Wilma June Nissen was born on October 19th of 1954 in San Francisco, California, to Charles Clarence Nissen and June Eva Nissen. She had a younger sister named Mona. Wilma and Mona, though, would spend much of their time in separate foster homes due to being taken away from an abusive father after their mother abandoned them when Wilma was only 8 years old. As Wilma's daughter, Krissi, told me, her whole life was one tragic event after another. Based on records, Wilma's biological father died in the year 1986 and her biological mother died in the year of 2003. Wilma was extremely neglected as a child, even being locked in a bedroom closet for periods of time. She was taken away from her father around the age of 10 years old, and when she was, it was obvious that she had been very cut off from the outside world. As Krissi told Kelloland in 2021, she was basically wild when they got her. Wilma had never been to school, she couldn't read or write, and she didn't even know how to use a fork, all at 10 years old. Wilma's sister Mona was unable to hear, and she was unable to speak. She was deaf and she was mute. No child should ever have to face even a % of the abuse Wilma and Mona had to on a daily basis growing up. Their father was neglectful and abusive, but it only escalated after he lost his job and they were living in his car. Child neglect is obviously a very serious form of abuse where a caregiver fails to provide for a child's basic needs such as food, shelter, medical care, emotional support, or education. This lack of care can have detrimental long-term effects on the child's physical, emotional, and mental development. Children who experience neglect may struggle with low self-esteem, difficulty forming relationships, and poor academic performance. Many children who grow up in these type of households will go on to live high-risk lifestyles that put them in unsafe situations on the regular. I want everyone to keep that in mind as we go through this story. We also have to take into consideration that these two girls, Wilma and Mona, were growing up through the 50s and 60s, and they were entering adulthood in the 70s. Yes, they could have finally entered loving homes with a father and mother figure who showed them care, but that does not mean that they ever received proper therapy for the things that they went through before they entered those homes. In December of 1964, Wilma was placed with foster parents Maxine and Marshall Holt in Anaheim, California. They described her as a happy and bubbly child who learned fast. Maxine taught Wilma reading, writing, and math. There was one time that really touched Maxine's heart, and that was when Wilma looked up at Maxine and said, "I love you, Mother, for teaching me so many things." Wilma stayed with the Holt family for only 2 years. Maxine had unfortunately developed rheumatoid arthritis and was unable to care for Wilma or her 2 other foster children. Maxine told the Sioux City Journal in 2006, "I always felt like every foster child that walked into our front door, they were ours. When they leave, you have to let go, in a sense." After 1966, Wilma was moved between several foster homes over the next year, but she remained in contact with Maxine and Marshall. They would often meet up with her to take her to the park or celebrate her birthdays with her. However, they lost touch with her when she turned 22 years old. Wilma's final foster home was with Alice and Vince Haas in Seal Beach, California, beginning in 1967. The Haas's would, in total through the years, care for over 200 foster children. Alice worked as a cook for schools in Long Beach, California, and Vince worked for a machinery company and also as a janitor for their Catholic church. Due to the fact Wilma was behind when it came to her education, because of course she did not start school with the other children her age, she completed 10th grade at Mountain View High School when she was 17 in 1972. Months later, in October, on her 18th birthday, it is believed she went for a walk and wasn't heard from again by the Haasas until the summer of the following year of 1973. Krissi and authorities have tried to piece together Wilma's years as an adult up until her murder, but things are a bit fuzzy. Most of what they know came from public records, but a little bit did come from people who knew Wilma in her adult years. What is known, though, is that Wilma had married a few times in her life, first being to a 25-year-old Donald Eugene Wellington on August 5th of 1973. She was only 18. The two at the time were living in the Hollywood area. Maxine would later state that they never really saw much of Donald, but when they did see them together, the couple did seem happy. During Wilma's marriage to Donald, she would be arrested on several different occasions between September of 1973 and February of 1975 for selling sex for money. Wilma, though, would confusingly give birth to her first child, a son, Michael Pizarro Jr., on May 10th of 1974. This child's father was a man named Michael Pizarro, real name Michael Walker. This child was taken away from her on their way to Florida. Blythe Blumendahl, a retired sheriff who worked this case for many years, told the Sioux City Journal, "How Pizarro comes into this picture, I am floored," and states that he wonders if the child was a result of sex work or if this was Donald Wellington trying to sell a kid and was totally okay with the entire thing. They can't question Pizarro about her in current time because he died in a bicycle accident in Key West, Florida back in 1989. Then Wilma would give birth to her second child, a son, Donald Wellington Jr., at the end of that same year on December 12th of 1974. She would continue living with Donald until October of 1975, and then she would move to Long Beach, California with a man named Robert Alexander Irvin, who she would marry on June 21st of 1977. The two were working at a shop located at the corner of Bellflower and Artesia in Bellflower. On August 18th of 1977, Wilma prematurely gave birth to her third child, a daughter named Crystal Joy Irvin, nicknamed Krissi, at Long Beach Memorial Hospital. Krissi would thankfully be adopted by Wilma's foster parents, Alice and Vince Haas, a short time later because after Wilma gave birth, she basically just left. By the age of 23, Wilma had 3 children, 2 boys and a girl, and they had all been put into foster care, just like she had. Investigators believe that after Krissi was born, Wilma headed to San Diego, where for a short period of time, she lived in a camper. Then from there, it seems that she moved all the way across the country to Atlanta, Georgia, where she was living with a 54-year-old man she had met named Charles Inman Belt and his mother, Juanita, at 582 Techwood Drive. We know that she was living with them in February of 1978, and records show that she was attempting to change her last name to Belt at this time. About Wilma, Blumendahl stated, "The smallest thing in Wilma's life could be the biggest thing in the world to her, and she'll be up and happy and excited, and the next day she'll be down and depressed." He went on to say, "She'll always think that living 2 blocks away will be so much better, and off she'll go." Investigators would later speak with Charles Belt, who at the time was living in Tijuana, Mexico, and he told them that she left at random about 2 weeks after arriving and he never saw her again. He stated that he assumed she decided to go back to San Diego. Authorities have not been able to verify if Wilma did return to San Diego for a period of time during early 1978, But we know that the location that saw the end of her life was Lyon County, Iowa, an area roughly 1,150 miles northwest of Atlanta and roughly 1,715 miles northeast of San Diego. Lyon County, Iowa is the most northwesterly county of the state of Iowa. It's part of the Sioux City metropolitan area, although it is quite rural and primarily agricultural. The county seat is Rock Rapids, which is also the largest city in Lyon County. The county is known for its flat terrain, making it ideal for farming. Agriculture, particularly corn, soybeans, and livestock, plays a major role in the local economy. Its population during the late 1970s would have been roughly 13,000 people. Violent crimes like murder are rare in Lyon County, Iowa, so the events of October 4th of 1978 took the area by complete surprise. On Wednesday morning of October 4th, 1978, along Highway 182 in Rock Rapids, a 19-year-old telephone company worker named Steve Hussong was laying cable when he made a grim discovery: a body. The body was in a ditch near 190th Street and Cherry Avenue, not far from West Lyon Community School. About the discovery, Steve told Kellerland in 2006, "First thing, I thought it was a mannequin. I really thought there was a mannequin lying in the ditch. I got a little closer and realized it was an actual body." The body belonged to a woman with no identification on her, so she was classified as a Jane Doe. The Lyon County Sheriff's Office took over the case from there. The Jane Doe was wearing light green denim pants, bikini-style underwear, and white patent leather calf-length boots with a silver ring featuring a gold indentation on her right ring finger. The pants and underwear, though, were wrapped down around her left leg. She had no top on. She was nude from the waist up. Her feet over her boots had been tied together with a rope. On the screen are photos of the facial reconstruction of the Jane Doe created by Vicki Hardigan for the Lyon County Sheriff's Office in May of 1998. This Jane Doe's remains were extremely decomposed. Her face was unrecognizable, but the unrecognizable aspect of her face didn't really come from just the decomposition. It was from what happened to her either before she died or after she died. I say that what happened to her to make her face unrecognizable came before or after her murder because we don't know publicly what exactly happened that caused her death. We do know that her entire lower jaw was missing and she only had 2 whole teeth in her skull. It is believed that she had been in that location since July or June. They weren't sure if it had been a few weeks or a couple months. Authorities searched the surrounding area for any other evidence or clues, hoping to find other items of clothing, her jaw, more of her teeth, something the killer may have left behind, anything at all. They found nothing, though, that they viewed as having any connection to her case. Blythe Blumendahl stated that he believes, based on how her remains were found, that she had been dragged by the rope around her ankles, possibly by a vehicle. The area she was found in is not believed to be the area, though, that her life was taken. Blumendahl was quoted saying, "That's why her arms come forward. Her hands are forward and her hair is forward. The body is being dragged by the feet into the ditch. To me, it's an obvious sign that the body is deceased, being dragged face down." Her actual cause of death was uncertain during the beginning of this investigation in 1978, and it is currently kept private from the public. This Jane Doe, who was laid to rest under the name Unidentified Female, with 1978 being her death year, would remain unidentified until the year of 2006. Sheriff Craig Vinson worked this case for many years and tried every method available at the time to give her name back, but all efforts proved fruitless until the connection to a fingerprint card 27 years after her murder. They did take fingerprints from the Jane Doe in 1978 and they kept these on file. On January 31st of 2006, a Des Moines laboratory technician found a match between her left thumbprint and someone's left thumbprint from an old fingerprint card from the Los Angeles Police Department. The print card was for an arrest for Wilma June Nissen. They were able to positively identify the Jane Doe as Wilma, the missing woman from California who left her daughter after she was born in 1977. Blumendahl released the news of the identification to the public on February 16th of 2006. Wilma was only 23 years old at the time of her murder. The print card was for an arrest in 1973. The charge was written down as prostitution. The alias of Wilma on the card actually stated that she went by the nickname Boots, and if you remember, she was found originally in a pair of white boots. Krissi's adoptive parents never told her much about her biological mother or father. They never said much about Wilma, which was surprising because they cared for her themselves for many years. But of course, it may have just been difficult for them to talk about. Now, when Krissi was 17 years old, she wanted to start searching for her biological parents. Krissi had a friend that she had been in 6th grade with together in the same class, and this friend's mother tried to help Krissi find her parents. This friend's mother's name is Starla Patterson, and Starla searched tirelessly for so many hours on end for Krissi's parents, specifically her mother, Wilma. Starla hoped more than anything that she would be able to reunite Krissi with her mother eventually, whether it was in person, hopefully in person, or lying flowers on a grave. Starla had actually helped Krissi locate her biological father, Robert Irvin, and they met after 17 years at a Denny's restaurant in Bellflower. At the time, he was working and living at a mini-mart and sleeping behind the counter at night. Krissi asked him about her mother, but he didn't have much information to tell her. He died a few years later. After locating her father alive, Krissi was hopeful that Starla would help her locate her mother as well. Starla was casually reading a California newspaper when she saw an article regarding the identification, and she recognized the name Wilma June Nissen. She was sure that this was the name of Krissi's mother. Then she saw the name Wellington and knew that it had to be the same woman. Starla headed over to Krissi's. A friend answered the door, and Starla asked the friend what Krissi's mother's name was. The friend replied, Wilma June Nissen, and Starla at this point completely broke down. She was so devastated because she wanted to find Wilma alive. She wanted to reunite the two joyfully. She didn't want it to be a sad occasion. Starla told the Sioux City Journal, maybe it was a fairy tale, but I wanted her to have that. Starla had helped Krissi discover what happened to her biological father, so she was extremely hopeful to find out what happened to her biological mother as well. She just never expected the news that Krissi's mother had been an unidentified homicide victim for 27 years.
To hear that your biological mother had been murdered.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was a shock. It answered a lot of questions on where was she, why couldn't I find her, why did I never hear from her, and brought up a whole bunch of new ones.
The biggest new question: who murdered Wilma Nissen?
A memorial was held for Wilma on Saturday, June 3rd of 2006 at Riverview Cemetery in Rock Rapids, Iowa. In attendance was Wilma's previous foster parents, Marshall and Maxine Holt, Starla Patterson, former Sheriff Craig Vinson, and Sheriff at the time working the case, Blythe Blumendahl. Krissi, who was 28 years old at the time, was planning to attend the memorial, but was unfortunately unable to last minute. Wilma was given a new grave marker, a pink granite headstone, this one with her name and birth year on it, and the inscription, Our Girl. It was donated by Sioux Falls Monument Company Family Memorials by Gibson. White roses were placed on her grave, and Marshall and Maxine shared memories of the girl that they considered their daughter for a period of time, a daughter that they had been dearly missing for so many years. Yes, they were only her foster parents for 2 years, which isn't a lot of time, but they had a bond with her, and they stayed close even after she gained new foster parents. Marshall and Maxine shared what they remembered from the first time that they brought Wilma home, that she immediately called Marshall Daddy and went straight for the family dog. She was so beyond excited to finally have a dog. She didn't grow up with any pets. Wilma was unable to read or write, but Maxine had her reading at a first grade level only a year after taking her in. They did truly wish they could have kept her longer, but even from the start, it wasn't anticipated to be a long-term foster situation. Marshall and Maxine stated that they always wondered what happened to her and always held hope that she would get in contact with them eventually in some way, but when years and years and years passed and they hadn't heard anything, they really did come to the conclusion that she had passed away. They said that the very last time that they ever saw her was during Christmas of 1975 when she came over for a visit, and at that time she was with Donald. The last time they heard from her was the following Mother's Day when Wilma sent a card for Maxine. Maxine sent her a birthday card that fall in October, but it was returned. Marshall stated, "Although it's not what we'd like to hear, it's nice to know. It's closure for us." Wilma's biological sister, Mona, was 47 years old at the time and developmentally disabled, but she did respond to photos of Wilma and learned of her death. Her caregiver, though, decided it was best to not tell Mona the gruesome details surrounding her sister's death because she didn't want to upset her. Krissi sincerely thanked everyone for caring so much about her mother and for everyone sending so much love her way. She was just in shock. She always wanted to know why her mother left. Why did her mother leave her daughter behind? And now she would never get to know that. She wanted to know if maybe motherhood just wasn't her thing. It was always in the back of her mind of, yes, my mother didn't want me when I was a child, but is there any way in adulthood we could have a relationship? Although Krissi was unable to attend her mother's memorial in June of 2006, she did visit her mother's grave in September of that same year. Krissi told the Sioux City Journal that even though she had met her biological father when she was 17, she never really knew anyone related to her by blood, and that she really wished she could have known her mother. Krissi was just, more than anything, so confused. She was thankful to know finally what happened to her mother, but the discovery of her mother's death left her with more questions than answers. She wanted to know why. Why would someone have done this to her mother? What happened that led to her mother's murder? Who was responsible? Were multiple people responsible? Why would her killer or killers feel like taking her life was a necessary thing to do? Wilma's autopsy report from 1978 stated that she had a dislocated right elbow and a possible dislocation of her cervical vertebrae. A cervical vertebrae is one of the 7 bones that makes up the cervical spine, which is the uppermost part of the spine in the neck. Blumenthal stated that he believed this to be a sign that she had possibly fought back against her attacker or attackers. That or these injuries could have occurred after her death when she was possibly being dragged by the rope, if that is what actually happened to her. Wilma's body was exhumed in September of 2007 in the hopes of obtaining more information regarding her murder, most importantly, possibly collecting DNA from her killer or killers. They were hoping that maybe if she fought back, there were some traces of DNA under her fingernails. Blumenthal was unsure exactly when Wilma had been originally buried, but he figured it was either late 1978 or early 1979. Krissi watched as her mother's coffin was lifted from the ground, hoping this would result in eventual closure. Blumenthal would discover that inside the coffin was a metal container, and inside that container was a body bag that held Wilma's remains. Unfortunately, that body bag was filled with gallons of water. He estimated about 50 gallons. Some flesh and skin remained of Wilma's, but everyone knew obtaining any DNA from her body after it was submerged in that much water for so many years would be almost impossible. They knew that the chances of this were slim, but were hopeful, sending her remains off to the state crime lab. They would, though, find DNA on her body in some manner. How and from what part of her body is kept private from the public, like so many things in this case, but they would locate DNA from not just one person, but multiple people. Now, past investigators and investigators that would be put on the case later on have attempted to piece together the events leading up to Wilma's murder. They discovered that she had been working at an escort service in Sioux Falls in 1978. Sioux Falls is the most populated city in the state of South Dakota. This escort service was called playgirls or playmates. It seems that the service used the names interchangeably. 3 years after her identification, though, there was an update in her case, one that involved an arrest. In August of 2009, 82-year-old John Van Gameren was arrested for 6 counts of perjury, a Class D felony. It was discovered he had lied to authorities about his involvement in a Sioux Falls party that had hired sex workers. As we know, Wilma's body was found in Lyon County back when she was a Jane Doe, but she had been working out of Sioux Falls. How did she get to Lyon County? Detective Jeff Berkey, who worked the case for about 10 years after Blumendahl, stated it is believed that many men in Lyon County, one being Van Gameren, were hiring escorts from Sioux Falls, an area roughly 40 miles northwest. Now, when it comes to the lies that he told authorities, this included him claiming he did not know who had arranged for the girls to be at a bachelor party thrown in Sioux Falls. It is believed he also lied about ever having the girls in his home at all. He allegedly lied and said that he had a wallet stolen or it was last seen at an airport in Las Vegas when it had actually been stolen by one of the girls. And he lastly allegedly lied about transporting the girls from Sioux Falls to his home in Lyon County. It seems that John Van Gameren and his attorney cooperated with authorities and the charges were dropped in 2010. After the arrest, he was able to tell the complete truth under oath. Lyon County Attorney Carl Peterson stated, "Perjury is a very unique criminal proceeding. It affords a defendant the opportunity to erase his allegations of providing false testimony by making truthful statement to law enforcement under oath." I'm not entirely sure what he told authorities, but whatever he told them, it seems like he was telling the truth, or they heavily believed he was telling the truth, and that it helped lead them to other people that may definitely have some involvement in Wilma's murder, but they did not believe that John Van Gameren had anything to do with what happened to Wilma. Authorities' overall goal, of course, was to discover who took Wilma's life, and it didn't seem like John Van Gameren had any direct involvement in that murder, but they did state that from this arrest, they did gain new information regarding her case. They denied, though, to further elaborate what information that was. Another person that was a suspect in this case for a period of time that I do have to mention is Robert Ben Rhodes, who is also known as the truck stop killer. He is an American serial killer and rapist who has been confirmed of killing and torturing 2 couples in Illinois and Texas between 1989 and 1990, but it is suspected he may have tortured, raped, and killed more than 50 women between 1975 and 1990. He was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder and is currently serving a life sentence at Menard Correctional Facility in Southern Illinois. You might be wondering, how did they think that the truck stop killer had anything to do with Wilma's murder? Well, Rhodes was living in Sioux Falls in 1978, and that is how he was originally connected to this case, but Berkey interviewed him in prison and he was eventually completely ruled out as a suspect in her case. Now, mainly working on this case through the years was first Sheriff Craig Vinson, then Sheriff Blumendahl, then Chief Deputy Berkey, and now there is another person in charge of this case. But unfortunately, the sheriff's office has given Krissi little to no information regarding who is currently overseeing her mother's case. They also won't tell her if there's been any updates in it. Berkey, though, when he was overseeing this case, was able to uncover quite a bit. He announced to the public on May 2nd of 2016 that there was a huge development in Wilma June Nissen's case. This development stemmed from the arrest back in 2009. I do have to say that the sheriff's office has had quite a few suspects in this case through the years. At one point, when Blumendahl was in charge of it, he had 8 suspects, all still alive at the time. Without a confession, though, there wasn't much they could do. Through the years, there were quite a few suspects in this case, but in 2016, this was the first time that anyone in charge of the case really said publicly, we think this person had something directly to do with Wilma's murder. We are going to come back to the update in 2016 momentarily because that is a huge part of this case, but I do want to quickly discuss DNA. I know that so many people are probably wondering what's going on with DNA because they found people's DNA in relation to this case. So whose DNA is it? According to a Kelloland article posted on June 8th of 2021, Berkey stated that the Lyon County Sheriff's Office hired a Scandinavian-based company using a new technique of DNA testing where they took DNA and amplified it by making multiple copies of a specific DNA sequence. Unfortunately, CODIS, or the Combined DNA Index System, a national database of DNA profiles used to solve crimes and identify missing people, at the time did not work with amplified DNA. From my research, though, they currently do. Due to that, could there be a chance with DNA? Because according to Berkey, like I stated before, there's not just one person's DNA to work with, there's multiple. As Krissi told Kelloland about possibly solving her mother's case, the more people that hear her story, the more likely it is. They're so close. It feels like they're so close. Just one little thing could solve this. The more people that hear it, the better the odds. She deserves to have justice. Whoever did this to her deserves to face justice. Back to the 2016 update though. Berkey released a photo of a suspect in this case, and this is a solid suspect that we have. Someone that they believe may have been responsible or had some part in Wilma's murder. This woman was an escort with the same service Wilma was working for in 1978. Her actual name has never been released to the public, but her alias has. She went by the name Sugar. Berkey stated that she was an escort, a dancer, and someone who liked to rob other escorts. The photo on the screen is of her in the mid-1970s. Berkey stated that it may have been this woman and also another suspect, one that they haven't released a photo of publicly. I'm not sure if they even have a photo of her back in the 70s, but her alias was Peaches. She is a Black woman with a lighter complexion who is from the Thunder Bay, Canada area. Berkey stated that Sugar, Peaches, and Wilma all worked for the same escort service in Sioux Falls and that they would attend these sex parties in Lyon County together. He stated that Sugar and Peaches possibly robbed Wilma and then took her life, leaving her in a ditch in Lyon County. Berkey did speak with Sugar in person multiple times, and he said that she simply will not budge when it comes to any information on Wilma.
Yes, we have spoken with Sugar several times.
You've spoken with her.
Yeah.
What came out of that?
Denials.
Do you believe she killed Wilma?
I don't know who I believe killed Wilma, but I do know there's several people that know who killed Wilma or that were there and saw Wilma get killed. Now, whether she did it or not, I don't know. Whether she knows about it, I do believe she knows about it.
Berkey stated that when authorities started questioning people around Lyon County about these sex parties from back in the day, people were extremely defensive and didn't want to talk about them. Berkey, though, just wanted everyone to realize that they weren't trying to target them or arrest them for attending one of these parties from years ago involving illegal activity. He just wanted help solving a cold case. He wanted to see if anyone had any information to give forth, if anyone had possibly seen Wilma with Sugar or Peaches, or maybe saw anything suspicious. He wanted to see if any of these guests at these parties had any information to give forth that might help them find out who took Wilma's life. You never really know what information could lead to an arrest. The sheriff's office seems to have a lot of information regarding Sugar, but has never released that information to the public. Chances are they're wanting someone to come forward with information that wasn't released anywhere publicly, so they know that this person possibly has factual and helpful information. Berkey, though, told the Sioux City Journal that the suspect fled to Canada not long after Wilma would have been murdered. Then she stabbed someone in Canada and made her way back to the United States. Berkey told Siouxland Proud that he believes they know where Wilma's life was taken and that based on her cause of death, that multiple people were involved, and he thinks those people were Sugar and Peaches and that robbery was the motive. At the time I'm filming this video, they are still attempting to locate Peaches. As we know, and we've talked about so many times on my channel, polygraph tests are not a legitimate way to tell if someone is telling the truth or not, but I do have to mention this because it is a part of the case that Sugar has undergone a few polygraph tests, and each time the results have come back as inconclusive. Investigators feel like they have a pretty good outline of suspects, people who maybe saw something or were at Wilma's last party before her murder and are simply not talking. Anyone with information about Wilma's homicide, Sugar, or Peaches is urged to contact the Lyon County Sheriff's Office at 712-472-8300 or submit a tip on the Lyon County Sheriff's Office tip page that will be linked in the description of this video. Currently in this case, Krissi feels left in the dark. She doesn't know much about what they've possibly discovered about her mother's case in the past few years, really since the update in 2016. She, though, has been fighting for more attention brought to her mother's case, and she's been doing that by reaching out to YouTubers and podcasters. Wilma's case has been featured on podcasts such as The Fall Line, The Trail Went Cold, and The Murder Diaries. Still to this day, Krissi sits with so many questions about her mother's case and just wants to know where authorities currently are in the investigation, but little is being shared with her. There is so much about Krissi's life that she just really doesn't know, and one of those aspects which is really sad is that she has never been reunited with either of her half brothers. Krissi even gave authorities some of the photos that she had of her mother, and she doesn't currently have them because she's never been given them back. It seems that the Lyon County Sheriff's Office has not reburied Wilma's remains since 2007, and that they're waiting for technology to advance enough to go through with more testing of the DNA in connection to her case. Could there be an update soon? Possibly an update thanks to genetic genealogy. Genetic genealogy is something that I talk about all the time here on my channel. I want to say that I talk about genetic genealogy in probably about 75% of the videos that I come out with anymore. Genetic genealogy is the method of extracting DNA, creating a DNA profile, and entering that DNA profile into a genetic database like GEDmatch or Ancestry or 23andMe in the hopes of locating familial DNA. Genetic genealogy is being used to identify John and Jane Does, but also to identify killers. Could this be a route that they go down very soon in this case? I guess we'll just have to wait and see. The love and determination Krissi has shown in seeking justice and answers in her mother's case is deeply admirable. Like so many family members of victims, though, she feels like there were investigators through the years that truly cared, but that as time passed and the case kept hitting so many walls, that the people currently in charge are not putting in as much effort to solve it. Which, as many of you can probably agree with, is surprising considering that there is DNA, multiple people's DNA. It may just take working with the right company to connect that DNA to the people it belongs to and finally solve this case after 46 years. Like I said before, this is a case where there is so much information kept from the public, so there's a lot of things that I wish I had the answers to that I just don't. I'm not sure if they do have 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people's DNA in this case. I'm not entirely sure. That information has never been released publicly, but they do have that DNA and they do have a bunch of suspects. So you would think that they would at least attempt to compare the DNA that they have from these suspected killers to the suspects and see if there is a match. I'm not entirely sure if they have done that or not. Could it possibly be one of those situations where they have DNA and it doesn't match the suspects that they have, but they do think that the suspects that they have may have some involvement, but not enough involvement to have left their DNA behind? That very well could be the situation. Sometimes when investigators on a case get extremely quiet, it's because they're getting close to solving it. And I truly hope that that is the reason why they're staying silent, and not because there's new people at the sheriff's office who simply don't care. Wilma's case has been taken off of the Lyon County Sheriff's Office website though. If you want to keep up with Wilma's case, you can join the Facebook group that I will have linked down below in the description of this video, or follow the Reddit page at r/Wilma June Nissen. This case is 46 years old. That is 4 years away from 50, which is half a century. Half a century is far too long to go in a case without answers when that very case has so many suspects and also DNA. I just hope that all of the things that need to come together eventually come together and Krissi can get the answers that she's been longing for so many years. Because like I say often in the cases that I cover, the victims are unfortunately no longer here. As heart-wrenching and heartbreaking and most often tragic as it is, they are no longer with us. All the ones left behind can really do is try to grieve through it the best that they can and memorialize the person in the way that they find respectful and loving. Justice is for the victim. Yes, 100% it's for the victim. They deserve to have justice in their case, but it is also for the ones left behind. Wilma, who had a devastating childhood, grew up and didn't make the best choices in life, but does that mean that she doesn't deserve justice and the people who did this to her don't deserve to spend the rest of their lives behind bars? No. Before I end this video, I want to thank Krissi again for reaching out to me originally and even just trusting me with covering your mother's case. And to my subscribers, I want to thank you all for taking a little bit of time out of your day to hear about Wilma's case. It's one that since I started looking into it, I truly have not been able to stop thinking about. If there are any cases that you possibly want me to cover here on my channel, make sure to send those requests over to gabulosiscaserequests@gmail.com. I hope you all have an amazing rest of your day wherever you are. Stay safe like always, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.